this morning 4 more years. After the most intense, expensive, and closely fought campaign in history, President Obama triumphs.
We have picked ourselves up. We have fought our way back. And we know in our hearts that for the United States of America, the best is yet to come.
The president seals his victory with crucial wins across the battlegrounds. A bitter loss for Governor Romney, met by grace.
This is a time of great challenges for America, and I pray that the president will be successful in guiding our nation.
Congress still deadlocked. Republicans win the House, Democrats the Senate. Our powerhouse political team on what the next 4 years means for your family, your job, and your future. GMA's special coverage of election 2012 starts right now.
This is a special edition of Good Morning America, Election 2012, live from your election headquarters in Times Square.
And good morning, America. Good morning to Robin Roberts at home. Great to have Elizabeth Vargas back with us this morning. The whole team is here, and what a night. President Obama secures his second term with a surprisingly sweeping victory, and was capped off with a speech full of fire but also conciliation. The president saying he learned from and listened to those who did not vote for him, and there he is on stage last night, savoring the victory with his family.
And here are the final numbers. The Electoral College, 303 votes for President Obama, 206 for Governor Romney. The popular vote, President Obama with more than 59 million votes right now. Governor Romney with 56 million votes. ABC News projecting an Obama win in Ohio at 11:25 p.m.
That put him over 270. The big state of Florida is still out there, Elizabeth. The numbers could still climb for President Obama. He's ahead there right now. The other major story this morning, that nor'easter affecting the East Coast right now with as much as half a foot of snow on the way. Our extreme weather team, Sam and Ginger Z, tracking the latest. We're going to get to that, but right now, let's get right to President Obama's victory. Matthew Dowd was with us all last night here to break down the victory for President Obama. And first and foremost, and this was a number we talked about yesterday, the president was more in tune with a changing America. You see that number, 72%. That was the share of the vote last night held by whites. 4 years ago was 74%, and that is exactly what President Obama predicted.
And not long ago it was 90%. This is a changing America, which makes a changing electorate. And I think that's the thing that President Obama was able to tap into a lot of different ways. Single women, younger voters, but especially the lower number of white voters. And I think that's what really Mitt Romney couldn't overcome on Election Day. What's happened with the Republicans is the Republican Party is a madmen party in a modern family America. And it just doesn't fit anymore.
And it all came out last night. The other thing we saw last night, the president having a bit of a wind at his back at the end of the day. We look at these numbers when we ask people, is the country off on the wrong track? 52%, a majority, but as recently as August, it was above 60%. A year ago, 77%. People believe we were making progress.
You combine this slide, which in June, it was basically President Obama can't win. And when you looked at the wrong track number in June, 20 points higher than it was on Election Day, to this number. So you combine that with what the electorate looked like, and this number, it was President Obama was able to squeak out a small but a very convincing victory.
Across the board, and that was built on some decent economic news that built up in the last several weeks. So the president combined a smart strategy going after that changing America with some good luck.
And his turnout operation worked very well, and it just put these two things put Mitt Romney at a disadvantage he could not overcome.
Matthew Dowd, thanks very much.
All right, and George, the president and his wife and 2 daughters spent election night in Chicago with their extended family. The ecstatic crowd in that city screaming and cheering when the president took the stage with the First Lady to give his victory speech. It was well past 1:30 in the morning East Coast time when that happened. ABC's Jake Tapper was there and joins us now live from Chicago this morning. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Elizabeth. It was a grueling grind of a campaign, but after almost 180,000 flight miles on Air Force One, 170 events by the president in battleground states, and hundreds of thousands of nasty negative ads on both sides, early this morning, it all came to an end with some grace and poetry. It was a victory that came earlier than many expected.
I want to thank every American who participated in this election. Whether you voted for the very first time or waited in line for a very long time, fix that.
The outcome became clear before midnight as the president's Midwestern firewall fell into the O column. Wisconsin, then Iowa, then Ohio. Networks declared his re-election inevitable.
Barack Obama has been re-elected.
He and First Lady Michelle Obama rejoiced with the vice president and his wife and other friends and family. The president giving a special thank you to the First Lady.
And I wouldn't be the man I am today without the woman who agreed to marry me 20 years ago. Let me say this publicly, Michelle, I have never loved you more. I have never been prouder to watch the rest of America fall in love with you too, as our nation's First Lady.
The president tweeted to his supporters, "We're all in this together. That's how we campaigned, and that's who we are." Crowds rejoiced in Times Square, outside the White House, in Chicago. But not so much at the headquarters for Mitt Romney in Boston, where bystanders said you could hear a pin drop as the networks called the election for President Obama. Reports last night that Governor Romney was so confident in his victory that he had only written one speech beforehand, a victory speech.
Like so many of you, Paul and I have left everything on the field. We have given our all to this campaign. I so wish that I had been able to fulfill your hopes to lead the country in a different direction.
But in the end, it was not even close. Obama won even those outstanding battlegrounds like Virginia, Nevada.
I just spoke with Governor Romney, and we may have battled fiercely, but it's only because we love this country deeply.
So, George, the question now, what now? And President Obama has said that he will reach out to Republican leaders. He wants to meet with Mitt Romney. He even last night reached out to Romney voters. Where are some areas of compromise? Well, perhaps tax reform, perhaps immigration reform. We shall see in the days ahead. George.
That's right. That's going to start right away. Jake Tapper, thanks very much. As you mentioned, it was a very different scene in Boston last night. You could see the shock and sadness on the faces of Governor Romney's campaign, all his supporters there. He took the stage, a gracious speech of his own. ABC's David Muir has been covering Governor Romney from the start, and boy, you looked at those faces last night, David. You saw his campaign team. They really believed right up until the end in their theory of the case. They thought they could win this.
Yeah, no question, George. In fact, they were very emotional afterwards, some of the senior team, as they were leaving here after that concession speech. And you know, we were hearing in the final days about the ground game, vastly outperforming McCain's ground game 4 years ago, and how they were performing with independents in their own internal polling, and particularly in Ohio, and then late in the game in Pennsylvania, they thought they had some strength there. But George, the last thing that was quite telling was that last midnight campaign flight as that trip to the final rally in New Hampshire was underway. A senior advisor telling me, look, it's all going to come down to the economy, the 7.9% unemployment rate, and in the end, people are going to vote for Romney. But I got to tell you, George, I was diving into those exit polling numbers this morning, the final analysis, and Romney only beat President Obama by 1 point on trust to handle the economy, but on that bigger issue of empathy, understanding my economic problems, the president won by 10 points, and that was the deciding factor in the end, George.
And given that number, is there any second guessing this morning that you can detect among the Romney team about his strategy?
Well, you know, you heard him in that concession speech saying that Paul Ryan and he left everything on the field. He has said that of his campaign, saying we left nothing in the locker room. And I think as they look back at this, they're going to look at some of the biggest missteps as self-inflicted. There was that tape about the 47%, the comments. But then there was that first debate. It didn't come up in the first debate. They had momentum. And I got to tell you, George, even in these final days, the campaign thought he might have turned it around in that Denver debate. A different story, though, this morning, George.
Okay, David Muir, thanks very much.
All right, George, and as we said, this tense race came down to those crucial battleground states. We just heard all along about how important Ohio would be. Ohio put him over the top. In Florida, however, they are still counting the votes. Florida, another battleground state, and that's where ABC's Cecilia Vega is this morning in Tampa. Cecilia, good morning.
Hey, Elizabeth, good morning to you guys back in New York. Boy, what an unbelievably long night it has been out here. As you said, they are still counting ballots this morning. We still don't know what the results are here in this state. Some 200,000 ballots, in fact, to be counted. President Obama, in the votes so far that have been calculated, holds a slight lead above Governor Romney, about 45,000 votes so far. Those long lines that we saw here in the state leading up into Election Day persisted even yesterday. There were reports as of Election Day of some voters still standing in line at 2 o'clock in the morning waiting to cast their ballots in Miami-Dade. Now, those long lines that stretched down the block and made for angry voters, coupled with all these absentee ballots, Elizabeth, means that absentee poll workers are still back at it again this morning. We should know the results later today. Elections officials here in Florida promising every single vote will be counted.
What a marathon. Cecilia Vega, thank you so much. And Florida has 29 electoral votes at stake.
A lot still out there.
Those are still out there.
You know, coming into this yesterday, we talked about the importance of the women's vote. We want to get back into that today. It turned out to be just as important as we thought. So we're going to bring in our powerhouse political team of insiders. We've got Donna Brazile, who ran Al Gore's campaign back in 2000, Nicole Wallace with President George W. Bush's and John McCain's campaign, and of course our own Cokie Roberts. And Donna, let me begin with you. And some of the numbers here tell the story. The gender gap is still real. President Obama won with women overall, a little over 11 points over Governor Romney. But look at this second number, and this is the number among single women, non-married women, blowout for President Obama, 67% for the president, 31% for Governor Romney. The president's campaign targeted those unmarried women from the start.
George, they invested in this